I need to go walk my dog, but before I go, I like to eat some fruit, some water, because I like to be hydrated. I like to get my system started basically because I usually walk for 40 minutes. So I have water and very good ripe kiwis. So let's indulge. I actually do no phone mornings now. It feels so amazing. So now let's have something more substantial and discuss what we're going to do today. The goal of this video is to show what I was eating as a raw vegan and what I eat in a day now. And we will do nutrition analysis and cost analysis of both diets. After I walked my dog, I usually have something more substantial, which is jello. I love having my milk jello. I make it 2-3 times a week usually. And this is why you saw chocolate on my countertop. This is where it goes, because it makes it super delicious. So, first bite. In total, I will have an equivalent of 350 grams of milk. It's whole milk with cream top, 12 grams of gelatin, and 2 squares of dark chocolate. In general, this is the recipe. We made it, and I love this recipe so much. Especially, it's good for busy days because it sits in the fridge. You can always pull it out and eat, and you don't need to cook anything if you don't feel like it. Then I also have tea. I drink green tea with jasmine, and this is my immigrant thing because I used to have very, very good friends back in Russia. And also, whenever someone would come, would have those long tea parties, and my friends and I would have those tea parties, and we would always have some interesting tea going on. In Russia, the culture of tea drinking is very developed. So we have Chinese teas, Japanese teas, and you all you all have your favorite sorts. But recently I saw this loose leaf tea with jasmine. And when I opened the pack, I just felt like my life became 5-dimensional. Otherwise, I usually drink either milk or other cacao, and I drink water, my distilled water. So that's all I drink. I avoid black tea because it's more acidic than green tea, and it also stains teeth. So I'll get 2 pieces of fish here. This is $8 worth of cod. Wild cod. Here we go. So now we're going to make our lunch. We're going to cook cod sauteed with carrots. Everything we'll need is just carrots, fish, and salt, black pepper, and some olive oil I'm gonna use. You can use ghee or butter, whatever it is, to saute carrots with. We just need to soften them up before we add fish. Very quick, very easy recipe. What I ate on a raw vegan diet for lunch was usually also something with seafood. It was usually either seaweed salad or raw vegan sushi. I go like this, so then undo in this fashion, wearing my wakame that I just rinsed, squeezing excess water out, Maybe in smaller portions. I would like to use more carrots because they add a lot of flavor. They add a lot of, I don't know, they make this dish very delicious. Now we're going to grate the carrots. Nothing extraordinary here. I will use this side of the grater. So we're done here. Such a good mountain of carrots. Now we need to put it in the pan. I will preheat it and we'll transfer it. My goal now is literally just soften the carrots, season them a little bit, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of sea salt. Have some black pepper in the grinder, so I'm gonna use it. I let it cook a little bit, and then something I want to mention is that I usually have vegetarian breakfasts, and a couple of maybe like a month ago, I would have eggs for breakfast. This time you notice that I didn't have any eggs. The issue is that in the US, at least now, there is egg shortage. I shop at Whole Foods and they have the signs hanging that they have troubles finding eggs from the suppliers that are complying with certain like certifications of quality. I think that it's something to do with bird flu. I don't know, but I have been kind of involuntarily abstaining from eggs. So our carrots are getting a little bit more golden, just like the fabric that I'm working with nowadays. And we are ready to add our fish. I will increase the heat just a little bit such that the fish cooks well. I'm gonna cook it on one side, then I'm gonna flip it. Then I also like to just split the fish when it's nearly done because then it will get more sauce, you know? All of those vegan ingredients will give it its impeccable flavor. Another thing, by the way, I don't have this product on hand, but I usually do. I just got kind of tired of it, or I buy either frozen fish or that fish. It is pickled herring, and pickled herring is my all-time favorite. I eat it for breakfast usually, and when I do so, then I oftentimes even skip lunch because then, I'm not hungry till later in the day. Or I have like my dinner sometime between lunch and dinner time, and then before bed I eat a yogurt or something. So that's how it goes sometimes. Because, in general, what I eat in a day, like today I eat this, tomorrow I eat that. Like, another fun thing is that sometimes I show like what I eat in a day. It could be something that I eat routinely. When I eat it routinely, it means that I already had it so many times that I might have grown tired of it. So I film what I eat in a day. The next day I get something drastically different. Not like particularly drastically different. If I was to describe the formula of my diet, it would be, again, vegetarian breakfast, something with dairy, fish, and eggs, and or. Then for lunch, I have either nothing or if I have jello, I would have jello. Maybe then would have fish. Maybe I would fry up some ground meat. And then for dinner, if dinner or lunch they happen, then usually it's meat, some meat dish. And then for snacks, I have fruits. I have apples on hand, whatever seasonal fruits are there. Then meat, I oftentimes accompany with plantain. It's very delicious. I throw it in the oven and it's done. No hassle, no like hands-on work at all. Now let's flip the fish. So I already flipped this one. Whoop. Whoop. I like to bury it under the carrots such that we harvest all the flavors. You see, now it's easy to split up, so actually we'll just split it into pieces. Another super cool option for cod is to bake it. Just pop it on the baking sheet with sliced tomatoes. You can also grate some cheese on top of it, Or you can also add a little bit of sour cream to cover it, to add a little bit of sour flavor if the tomatoes are very sweet. This is what I had yesterday, actually. This was very, very good. Garlic powder would be good. So salt, garlic powder also will work really well there. And one more cod recipe for you. If you buy the pack of fillets, you can have whole like assortment of options that are all very decadent, very delicious. You can also make it with anchovies, garlic, chili, and capers. You can do something like that. You can go with just chilies and anchovy paste. You can just make it with chili and garlic. All of those things will be incredibly delicious. I highly recommend you experimenting with cod. Very versatile thing. By the way, while I'm waiting for fish to cook, this is kelp noodles. I craved them so bad. I made meat stew and I ate it with this because I just super craved kelp noodles. All of those noodles that are made of grains, they're so gross. They're slimy. I never know how to cook them, and they leave you feeling stuffed. Kelp noodles are their own product. They're just so delicious in a way that they don't have much flavor, so they make perfect ramen noodles. They're made of seaweed that's a processed food. They're alginated. They are turned into a paste and then extruded into noodles. So it's not like a whole seaweed that they strip off some like skin layer. No, it's not. It's processed food. Very rich in iodine if you digest them, but if you are on a grain-free diet or if you want to be on a grain-free diet, I highly recommend you use kelp noodles. Again, they're not a substitute for grain noodles. They are their own food. That is irreplaceable in my opinion and very unique. There's like almost no flavor. There's just some perfection of noodles. I don't know, my opinion. So here I have a few items that you may be curious about. First of all, this one. And you can be like, why the heck do you have cacao powder? What do you do with this? If you said that you use chocolate. I have this 90% Linded chocolate. The answer, I make chocolate butter with this. Cacao powder, a stick of butter, and I add honey to it. Both chewing gum and chocolate butter are a part of my dental routine. Whoop. Let's dig in. It's incredibly delicious. It's so amazing. I don't remember if I ate it in the kindergarten or my mom made it this way, but it's phenomenal. Carrots, again, remember, golden glow. Beta carotene. Could be nice actually in preparation for the summer season to produce more pigment to suntan very well.
To make this sushi, use raw nori sheets. Finally grate carrots, walnuts, sliced cucumbers, sweet peppers, and chop up some parsley. Mash avocado with fork or slice it to your liking. And use the dressing made of apple cider vinegar and shoyu and spices.
For dinner, we are having steak. The thing is that I already had 2 of my favorite kinds of steaks earlier this week, and today I really wanted to show you how I make my steaks, but the only thing that I had was vacuum sealed steak. And that thing always smells so sulfuric when you take it out of the package. It still freaks me out. We're going to prepare it. It's fully defrosted. I had it frozen. And we're going to start making it. I will show you my principle for how to make it. My favorite kind of steak, if I was to name it, would be picanha steak with very lean meat and a rib of fat. This is a strip steak, the one that we're going to make. Strip steak, and I'm not going to use any oils. I'll just show you how I prepare steaks without opting for using any external fats. I will start by preheating the pan. I think good temperature is achieved, so we can start. First thing that I will do, I will put the steak on the rib with fat layer. That will allow to render the fat, and it will help us to cook our steak very well without any oils. The steak actually does smell like death, so I'm gonna discard it. I'm not gonna make it any further. I'm sorry. We're going to return back to steak making next time. My genuine recommendation is never buy vacuum sealed steaks because they are atrocious. Try buying freshly cut steaks from the butchers. This is my manifesto because this smell is so offensive. Usually when you open fresh meat, it smells pleasant. You can eat it raw. You can smell it and you're like, yeah, this is edible. This one is just nuts. It's like, it smells like water in some industrial city with mega pollution going on. It's like, I don't know. And it's not rotten either. It just smells very bad. I don't know. Well, let's have a backup. Also vacuum packaged ground meat. We're going to have just simple beef because I have other meats are frozen. I'm not prepared to make them right this second. It will take me some time to defrost them and stuff like that. But I have ancestral blend like bison. I have venison. I have pretty interesting selection of meats. But we're going to make just ground beef. Since I already was in the steak mood, I was planning to show you the super cool condiment that I make for steaks. So we'll make it today, such that we make up for the loss a little bit. Why I was so excited about the steak was because I just aced a super good medium. Oh my god, it's such a delicious recipe. I will definitely show you how I make steak sometime later, I guess, because I really want to share that thing. Because it's really delicious. Really delicious. And super easy to make too. So meat will just fry up. Nothing extraordinary will happen here. I just prepare it to doneness. I add a little bit of water midway through. And I'm not gonna add any seasonings. I'm not gonna add any oils to this meat itself. So what I'm gonna use for this thing, basically, is gonna be our good old parsley and dandelion greens. Parsley I will be actually mincing into the condiment. Dandelion greens will be on the side. Then I will also need bobbies, and I will need red onion or shallot if you have shallot. And then I also will cut some bell pepper. But again, bell peppers will be on the side with dandelions. And the last super ingredient for this will be Tabasco. I will let the greens swim in the baking soda solution that I've always been doing this as a raw vegan especially. Of course, I always soak my greens in baking soda before I use them. I soak them and then I rinse them off. Usually, actually, organic greens, they have bugs in them, which tells me that there are no pesticides on them. But if there is some residue, baking soda successfully removes it from the surfaces. I will set the greens to rest with baking soda and I will start chopping other things. I actually want to sharpen my knife real quick. Since it is a condiment, I mince it very, very, very finely. I go over and over and over and over and over such that everything mixes very well. This can be split. This stores in the fridge pretty well. You can store it overnight. I don't know. I only tested it overnight. Now I'll just wash bell peppers, sweet peppers. I buy minis. I wash them with baking soda as well. In general, all produce, all apples, all fruits, I wash with baking soda. So I'll just have 4. I'll just slice them in half. They look very beautiful and bright. What's cool is that yellow, orange, and red, they all have different flavors. My favorite are red. So this is what I got going on. I have dandelion greens, sweet peppers. Actually, I'll steal one now. And my Tabasco savory thing going. As I said, I would absolutely make plantain as a company for all of this, but they didn't have any plantains in stock. So I wasn't able to buy one, but plantain here would be stellar. The meat is virtually done, so I'll just wait for the water to evaporate, and then we'll be eating. And actually calculating how this compares to my raw vegan dinner, which was a mega salad. As a raw vegan, for dinner I would normally have a huge salad. The salad would have 70 grams of pumpkin seeds added to it, then all vegetables, all possible greens that exist on the planet that you can buy from the store. What else was I adding there? Avocado, of course. I would have it with sauerkraut, with a lot of sauerkraut. I would have half a jar, like they sell those jars of sauerkraut at the store. I would put half a jar because I needed K2. And that was the only source where I could get K2 on a vegan diet. So I would eat sauerkraut every day. It was a super acidic thing as a result because I had vinegar, I had sauerkraut in it, so it was pretty harsh. But yeah, that's something that I was eating every day. My salad would weigh 1.5 kilograms. And it would have at least a pound of greens there. It was super loaded. So we're going to compare the calculations. Interestingly too, now I also eat greens. I don't abstain from greens, but I cut down, of course, on some of them. I don't like kale. Genuinely, I don't like kale. I don't like many of the greens, but the ones that I like, I absolutely enjoy and include in my diet daily. Parsley, dill, cilantro, sometimes I'm in the mood for cilantro. Other than that, I don't feel excited about anything from the greens section. But those raw vegan salads, oh my god, if you also add coconut aminos or soy sauce with apple cider vinegar, it's so delicious. Genuinely delicious. I'm not bullshitting right now. This is very delicious on its own. I'm actually very curious to try it with this steak thing. Wow, absolutely try it. Tabasco, fermented pickles, onion, and parsley. Just amazing. It's fantastic. So yeah, let's calculate now. Stumble on the subject of eating a salad. People simply do not understand how beautiful, addictive, and tasty the salads can be. So they take their old paradigm of what they see, this house salad, basically made of toilet paper and week-old cut two cherry tomatoes, and they think that this is a salad. This is something nutritious. No. Now let's look at the cost comparison of both diets. You can see that on a raw vegan day, you rely on many more items than you do on an animal-based diet. Animal-based diet in general is much more streamlined because there are few components in this diet that provide you comprehensive nutrition. And of course, here we're not we're not having liver, different exotic meats, organ meats and stuff. But this dish kind of representative. I was surprised that I actually cost matched the two diets because I remember spending far more on the raw vegan diet somehow. Another thing that was kind of unpleasant was the amount of food waste that I had in the raw vegan diet as well compared to the animal-based. But you will see some overlap, but of course raw vegan diet relies on many more food items than an animal-based diet. Then, of course, it also relies on supplementation, so it also needs to be considered. And you will see here that I also eat some other fruits. There are some things that change from day to day. The formula, the bulk of the diet was pretty similar. There were some pillar foods that I was consuming in both diets, such as seaweeds and nuts and seeds, like that hemp and flax breakfast I was consuming every day. It was religious thing of mine. And then greens, of course, salads. The formula for the salads would change because you can experiment with different flavors. With an animal-based diet, sometimes I have jello, sometimes I don't. Then fish, there are different variants of fish, different kinds. Then there are eggs or no eggs. Then there are organ meats like liver or no liver. These are the things liver, for example, is something that I don't eat daily, simply because I don't want it daily. Then in terms of dairy, I also sometimes I have yogurt, with berries, for example, then fruits also change all the time because the seasons change. Those things, yeah, just exercise common sense here in their judgments. There are things that are not particularly fundamental for the diet, but that change. And there are things that deliver nutrition in a very concentrated form that you don't necessarily want to consume every day. So those are the things. But now let's move on to see the analysis of nutritional values. And first, let's of course review the macros for both diets: raw vegan, green line with squares, and animal based, red line with circles. So I was hitting 2300 calories on a raw vegan diet. And an animal based diet for this day that I demonstrate in the video, I hit 1900 calories. However, on an animal based diet, I sometimes go to 2300 calories depending on the type of meat that I eat, whether I eat butter or not, which kind of fish I eat, because sometimes I eat fattier fish than cod, and so on and so forth. So these things vary, of course, but on the raw vegan diet, this was the minimum calories that I was consuming, because on some days I would have more fruit, I would casually snack on nuts sometimes, and so on and so forth. So I was probably nominally hitting around 23 to 2500 calories on a raw vegan diet. And on an animal-based diet, I hit 1900 to 2100 calories on average per day. Then, what we see on the plot here, I plotted protein, carbohydrates, sugar, fiber, and fat for both diets. And on the vertical axis, I denoted mass in grams. So if we look at the protein, this is the first thing that catches our attention, is that I doubled the amount of protein nominally. And not only that, but it became much more bioavailable. When I analyze my results, my body recomposition, my body, how it felt on a raw vegan diet compared to animal-based, I can tell that I was protein deficient, even though from this curve, I was operating in the regime of having 1 gram of protein per pound of body mass, which is pretty sufficient for an athletic person. Right now, I doubled this metric, and probably if we take into account the bioavailability of protein that I was consuming, probably this factor actually quadrupled. So I don't trust the data. All of the data that we see for raw vegan diet is of course smeared by some interesting fudge factors that can reduce all the metrics by a lot. And I will make some commentary further. Then with carbohydrates, we're not surprised. We're seeing that on the raw vegan diet, carbohydrates were exceeding. Then sugar. Sugar comes from fruits on both diets because I don't consume any processed foods. So sugar content in my diet is determined by fruit. My fruit consumption didn't change because I was on fat-dominated raw vegan diet, fat and greens, and now I am on animal-based diet with fruits, same amount of fruits. I cannot eat much fruit. Then fiber, of course, decreased when I became an animal-based because, again, of natural reasons. I no longer rely on greenery to fulfill my protein and micronutrient goals. And basically a lot of foods that bear nutrition, that bear appreciable nutrition, nowadays they are void of fiber. But I still consume some in the form of fruit, in the form of greens, because I enjoy I eat greens that I enjoy in the amounts that I enjoy. Then with fat, interestingly here on this curve, because again I had lean meat that day, fat is kind of, I think, undershooting for an average day, and of course increased fat consumption per day would increase this metric and would increase the caloric load on an animal-based diet here. But it's funny that on the raw vegan diet, my fat per day was actually, like almost 3 times higher than it is now, which is also a very funny metric. But again, I was trying to do my best to hit all necessary like fatty acids, so I was going heavy on hemp, on flax seeds, with all those things. Then to actually harvest enough protein to not get severely limited with certain essential amino acids, I had to consume pumpkin seeds, I had to consume Brazil nuts for selenium, and so on. So my fat was naturally high because I was relying on certain sources of essential nutrition that were naturally rich in fat. There was no other option. Now let's go through the vitamins. Of course, I also denoted on the graph that I was also supplementing with 40,000% RDV B12 pill, sublingual B12, methylcobalamin, and also I was taking 5,000 international units of D3 pill. Those things, those metrics are not on the plot. I am showing here only the dietary data, only things that come with food. Also, you will see here that on the left side I put percent RDV, and you will see vitamins on the x-axis, and you will also see the shaded gray rectangle, which covers the area below 100%, such that we can see where I might have deficiency, such that it's like clear from this plot. So let's analyze those interesting curves. Again, you saw that my sugar intercepted on both raw vegan and current animal-based diet, so and vitamin C also intercepted. It was an interesting thing. I guess the main source of vitamin C on both diets is fruits, especially bell peppers. They're a very rich source of vitamin C. And also greens that I still keep in my diet. They also contribute right now. Then also I took kiwis as a source of vitamin C on the exemplar day that I demonstrated in this video for animal-based diet, and kiwis are also a rich source of vitamin C, so here they're matched. Then another fun data point here is B12. Vitamin B12 on the raw vegan diet, I was actually getting 300% RDV from seaweeds. Nominally, I'm still due to make a very serious monologue about the articles that I used to base my decision to actually use seaweed as source of B12 for some period of time while on raw vegan diet. Because there are many papers that show that seaweeds, the kinds of seaweeds that I was getting, they are a reliable and decent source of B12. And consumption of the seaweed that I was consuming was plenty enough to cover the necessary needs of B12, which I had a very rude awakening from, and I'm very angry that I followed the advice of those scientific papers, and I still have this desire to hold the conversation with the researchers that wrote those papers. Fortunately, I have a data that supports my findings. So with B12, nowadays I get 800% RDV. Here I made a reel, you can see it in the description. I showed the data for my B12. I did blood work, which demonstrated that my B12 now is twice higher on an animal-based diet without a supplement compared to the raw vegan diet with seaweed and a supplement included. So my B12 doubled by consuming animal products and receiving B12 strictly from foods that contain bioavailable B12 with all necessary cofactors for its metabolism and conversion into real usable form that our cells can actually utilize. Another thing here you will see is that folate, B9, dietary folate decreased on an animal-based diet. This is only for the days when I do not consume liver. On the days when I do consume liver, of course, B9 will be sky high. But another interesting metric is that not only my B12 increased on a animal-based diet, but also my folate. And I made a post about it on my channel in the community section. Then if we look at other B vitamins, B1 of course is the B vitamin that's usually contained in foods such as it's contained in pork, it's contained in fish, and it's contained in grains. So B1 will be kind of on the lower side on an animal-based diet compared to a vegan diet, simply because those foods are not staples on an animal-based diet. But again, if you eat fish, then B1 will not be a problem. And then another data here, vitamin A. Vitamin A, I didn't delineate vitamin A as retinol and vitamin A as beta-carotene. I'm receiving both on my current diet. And of course, if you eat liver, then you eat plenty of vitamin A. Vitamin A stores really well. If you eat liver like once every week, for example, or once every 2 weeks, which I do. I eat ancestral blend, which contain heart and liver mixed in ground meat, and then I also eat liver on its own. Those things contain a ton of vitamin A. It stores for several months in the liver, so it's really not that big of a deal on an animal-based diet to worry about vitamin A, because again, if you eat like dairy, if you eat eggs, you also on a daily basis you supplement with vitamin A. But of course, the number of 300% RDV that we see for raw vegan diet is nonsense, because it's vitamin A that is locked in the food matrix. Then it's not having enough fats to metabolize it properly. Then I doubt that I'm a good converter of beta carotene into retinol and retinol. So I don't think that it really mattered. I don't know. I did accumulate beta carotene in my skin, which means that I was extracting it, but I can't say that I was converting it really well. Other things, of course, vitamin D. I do receive dietary vitamin D nowadays. Vitamin E, percent RDV is kind of based off how much an average American was getting in some year in the 20th century. It's an interesting metric for vitamin E. I don't worry about it. So some days I will receive less vitamin E than other days. I think dandelion greens actually are high in vitamin E. I don't worry about this vitamin. And interestingly also, I receive identical amount almost on both diets, which surprises me. Vitamin B6, by the way, is something that we are going to discuss in the vegan deficiency series, because I found some very interesting papers about cruciferous vegetables and their relationships with vitamin B6. Now let's move on to the minerals. Minerals. Let's look at the trends here. So apparently I was receiving far more selenium on the raw vegan diet than nowadays because of Brazil nuts, and those are powerhouse, of course, for selenium. Then seaweeds also contain some selenium. So does seafood, so does meat. So nowadays I receive 300% selenium daily. I used to do 900% selenium. That's quite an overshoot. Then, in terms of iodine, you see that I took good care of receiving enough iodine on a raw vegan diet, and on an animal-based diet, again, depending on how much fish I consume, this parameter will vary drastically, because on a raw vegan diet, I was very consistent with consuming seaweeds, 200% daily was my thing. And bear in mind that if you're vegan, then you need selenium for iodine metabolism, because without selenium, iodine will be toxic, will be destructive for the thyroid gland. Even though it's essential, it requires selenium. So it needs to be paired with something with selenium, with high dose of selenium. With animal foods, again, it comes naturally, similarly with seaweed, I guess, but it's better to consume more of it in bioavailable form. It's a powerful antioxidant. Then sodium I would disregard. Sodium is not interesting data point. Then if we look at copper and zinc, this couple is almost reversed. We see that now I receive far more zinc and far less copper than I used to. Copper, of course, was sourced from all the seeds and greens, but then at the same time, all of those minerals, zinc, copper, then magnesium, then calcium, the iron, they're all bound in a lot of foods of plant origin. So I don't know how much I was receiving. There is a correction factor here that will shift those things by a lot. If I can have, for example, animal foods, they will turn into emulsion in the digestive system. If we think about the greens, about the plants, about the seeds, they turn into a quite non-homogeneous substance inside of the GI system, and they don't digest fully. And then they also have some chemical binding of the minerals, especially. Some minerals, they will get released in certain pH inside of the intestine, for example, because of fermentation. So producing some acidity, some fermentation actually aids in digestion and absorption of minerals on vegan diets, on high fiber diets, on high carbohydrate diets, but not all of them. And then also, again, phytase only can do so much, and in certain individuals, to rip off the mineral ions and transport them into your body. A lot of the minerals will get in the toilet as a result on the raw vegan diet. So I don't know. And then this zinc and copper balance is interesting. I actually did blood work. I wanted to see my zinc and copper on the raw vegan diet. My zinc was in the normal range. It was in the middle of the reference range. So apparently receiving 200% daily through whatever foods I was consuming, which is nuts and seeds probably would be the predominant sources of zinc, was sufficient. But I don't know. I don't know if the blood work that I did was representative. If we look at calcium, I receive less calcium nowadays than on the raw vegan diet. But on the raw vegan diet, I was experiencing I was experiencing perceptible, let's say, effect on the bones. And as well, it was confirmed by the parathyroid hormone measurements that confirmed that I was calcium deficient. The fact that I could not increase my vitamin D, serum vitamin D, even on some high doses of the supplement, was not helping that either. But yeah, calcium, I was definitely deficient in calcium, in fact, on the raw vegan diet, even though I was getting more than 100% daily. Nowadays, I receive the most bioavailable form of calcium, and I receive it with cofactors, because if you consume dairy, then you consume calcium with K2 and with vitamin D, and also with fats, with everything to help deliver those vitamins, to help assimilate calcium properly. It's in the form of this organic calcium that is most bioavailable. So it's a really great, probably replaceable source of calcium for people who are calcium deficient. And that's why I prioritized dairy as one of the important steps, important milestones in my post-vegan recovery, because I felt, I knew that I was calcium deficient, even though, again, blood work will never show you calcium deficiency unless you do parathyroid hormone test. Potassium, magnesium is of course higher in raw vegan diet due to greens, due to seeds. 400% RDV I was hitting. Iron was higher on the raw vegan diet than now. I'm still due to do the ferritin test, because being plant-based, so I basically eradicated red meat from my diet almost entirely for several years, for probably 4 years before I went raw vegan. I was only consuming lean meat such as chicken, and then I was sporadically consuming lamb because I just suddenly craved it. My iron was low. Not even like iron, but ferritin. I haven't done any testing since to see if my iron recovered, because I started consuming far more red meat with heme iron at the same time with all of the necessary things to properly utilize it. I'm really curious to do the blood work, so whenever I have an opportunity, I will go and do that. Then manganese is another mineral that's abundant in greens. Then phosphorus. Phosphorus now also comes from dairy, from fish also. That's an interesting plot, because again, I'm plotting all of this data for vegan days. I don't know what I need to multiply those numbers by. I don't know how much I was actually getting from all of this. And again, please watch my video on the blood work. Blood work sometimes cannot tell you a lot. We looked at the major parameters. Then another few words was that I was consuming 12 grams of plant omega-3 per day and 26 grams of plant omega-6 per day on raw vegan diet. And now I consume about 2 maybe grams, 1.5 grams per day of each. So my ratio now is 1:1. It was varying on raw vegan diet depending on how much nuts I was eating. It was varying from 2:1 to 4:1. Probably 4:1 would be more accurate. I was definitely omega-3 deficient too. I am not a good converter, even if we say that I'm a woman. So let's take the highest conversion rate. Even though I am of European origin, so I'm a poor converter. There's probability that I'm unable to convert plant omega-3, as I know now, into the EPA and DHA at all. But as a woman, let's do maximum assessment, 17%. Then if I had 12 grams, then 12 by 17 will be 170 plus 34, so 2. I was supposed to be getting 2 grams of... It's nonsense. It's impossible. It's impossible because I was symptomatically omega-3 deficient. So, unfortunately, I couldn't get the blood work done. My doctor refused me. She said that it's impossible. They cannot order that. I need to go to some special clinic for that, with some wellness clinic, and then do it, and But of course, insurance doesn't cover that stuff. So I was not able to get tested, which I was extremely curious to get tested for omega-3 as a raw vegan. Because again, I prioritized omega-3 rich seeds and nuts. So I was very mindful about it, but never had actual data to verify if I was doing something right or not. So this is the data that I harvested. And again, this graph with the minerals will be also drastically offset if I, for example, introduce chicken liver. Then iron will be sky high. Then copper will be sky high as well if we include liver. And then if we think about back to vitamins, then with vitamins we'll also have certain offsets, such as folate, such as vitamin A, with just simple introduction of liver. Another metric here is choline. I didn't introduce it into the plots. I was receiving 38% RDV of choline per day on the raw vegan diet, nominally, and 145% recommend daily value of choline on an animal-based diet. I am very inclined to think that choline deficiency was probably one of the most devastating deficiencies that I had in the raw vegan diet, because I can't handle soy. And copious amounts of soy is the only way to hopefully, maybe, perhaps, bring your choline anywhere close to adequate values. Nobody would be able to eat so much soy as it's needed for addressing the choline deficiency, but vegans will have to figure it out experimentally, I guess, for themselves, because they don't like to listen to theoretic insights about it, and anecdotal evidence. But choline, I think, was one of the worst deficiencies that only now is becoming more or less pronounced in the media, in the pop science. People become aware of choline because people start going to plant-based diets, and that leads to deficiency in choline. And this is one of the central deficiencies, on top of B12, on top of methionine, on top of lysine. So this is something that I think will be in fashion soon, the discussion on choline. So this is the summary.